Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome the back. All right, today, as I promised, we're going to have us a Dominion Maps tier list. All right, so we're going to be judging these maps on a few different criteria. Make that 4. That will be looks, balance, navigation, and hazards. Now, I know balance and navigation kind of go a little bit hand in hand, but they are, in my opinion, different. When I talk about navigation, I mean not only the ease of getting around the map, but how much of the map is available to you and how many different places you can navigate around a map that matter, right? So for instance, a map can be pretty balanced and still not have good navigation. For instance, Sanctuary Bridge. It's relatively balanced, but doesn't have good navigation, in my opinion, because there aren't many places where you can go besides middle lane that really matter, right? You can kind of go on the sides and yeah, that's cool or whatever, but they don't matter that much. So that's an example of what I mean by navigation. And then the hazards are kind of obvious, right? There's kind of things around the map that can kill you, including ledge points that can kill you, and things of that nature. Even ledge points that can't necessarily kill you, but can lead to your death, right? So let's get right into it with Beachhead. So Beachhead is an interesting map. It's the newest map to Dominion, and in my opinion, the prettiest map. I love playing on Beachhead because of how good it looks. Of course, it makes sense because they had a lot of assets and experience when it came to making maps by the time this map came out, right? They had made a ton of other maps for even other game modes and had those assets to use. So it makes sense that this would be one of the prettier maps, in my opinion, in the game. Now, when it comes to balance, they did make some changes to this map, which I think were warranted. If you remember before, all of C was pretty much a hazard area. Pretty much, if you were Warlord or Raider, you were destroying people in that area because they just couldn't live. As soon as you got a guard break, they were dead, right? Because that area was so kind of compact, but also that all of the walls were hazards. That has kind of changed to where the hazards aren't that oppressive, but they're still there, and I kind of like how they play in that area. I don't think that we should get rid of hazards. I'm not one of those people who are like, just no hazards at all, and you shouldn't be able to insta-kill anyone. Like, I feel like if you make that mistake to get close to a place where you shouldn't be, you should be punished for it, as opposed to just, you know, not have it, because it would just be less fun. Anyways, I digress. So they also changed a little bit of the map when it comes to navigation. They made it easier to get from A to C, so that was a welcome change, and I think it brought a lot of good balance to this map. The only thing that I would say is wrong with this map is B. Because of how spread out B is, it's really hard to clear the minions as effectively as it is on, or I'm sorry, as effectively as you can on some of the other maps, and I think that's a little bit of an issue. It would be nice, you know, say if only vanguards were good at clearing minions, right? So not every character had a good minion clearing tool, but you know, I think we're pretty much way past that. But I think that's kind of where the game started off, as it should be. Like, vanguard should be in the middle and you should be clearing minions, and everyone else should be kind of doing different things depending on your role, right? But everyone can kind of clear minions. Like, obviously people are a little bit better at it than others, but for the most part it doesn't matter too much who's at mid. All right, so that being said, we are going to put our boy here in the we're gonna say A tier, because it only has the one problem with it, which is mid. Other than that, I think it's a pretty good map. The navigation is easy, it's pretty decent, and you'll see that I tend to favor maps where the points are even to get to for each team. So basically the opposite of like Sanctuary Bridge. Even though I think that is kind of balanced, I still think that I prefer maps where you don't know who's going to go where. Like, you can't really tell which zones belong to who, so people just kind of end up where they end up, and you know, you have some pretty good fights. It's not like hard to get the other team's zone. You know, you're not just fighting for your zone in B, you're fighting for all of the zones type thing. I like those maps a little bit better because they, in my opinion, require a little bit more teamwork. So moving on, next we have Citadel Gate, I believe this map is. So Citadel Gate is interesting because for me personally, I feel like Citadel Gate reminds me of like old school For Honor. It gives me this nostalgic vibe for Honor, and I don't know why. I think it's because maybe it was one of the first maps that they showcased. Or maybe it was like one of the only maps that you can play during the beta. I don't know why, but this map for me is like the original For Honor map. And even though it has the zones to where one is obviously for one team and not for the other, I feel like it's relatively balanced. And it's a fight. It's a good fight for B, right? And you can still kind of back cap it because people forget about the sides and people forget about the rampart, you know what I mean? So you can still back cap on it, which makes it fun because it's relatively wide. Again though, it's one of those maps that, like I said, it doesn't have, if it had all the points right smack dab in the middle, I would probably put it right at S tier. But Citadel Gate, I probably would say is A tier, top of A tier, if not like bottom of S, right? It's one of my favorite maps to play on personally. It looks amazing in my opinion, only because again, might be nostalgia, but I love the look of the wall. I love how it looks like we're entering into a city or entering into something that is heavily guarded, but this is like their last stand when it comes to at least the overall general look of Citadel Gate, right? The buildings look great, and for it to be one of the older maps, I just think it's you know, it does it for me. You know what I mean? It does it for me. As I mentioned before, navigation is good. You can go to many different places. Even though it's like the side areas, people seem to forget that they exist and like go straight for B, but it allows for some of the more sneaky characters to go on the side and back cap. Some of the better players that I've seen will do that, so you know, I think navigation is great. When it comes to hazards, there actually aren't many on this map. Like if you're going up on the ramparts, then obviously that entire place is a hazard, but again, most people don't go up there. There are a couple of hazards in each zone, but they're really like, it's really a niche scenario that you would ledge someone on A and especially on C. Like you're not ledging anyone there. Like there's no reason for you to be fighting in that way back room on C. So, you know, more often than not, you're not getting a ledge there. So I would say hazards could be better. I wish there was maybe one or two more hazards, but I don't deduct points for not having hazards. It's more of a, if the hazards are good, right? If they're a good place. Not having hazards, I think, is like, it is what it is. It doesn't necessarily make it better, but it doesn't make it worse. It's kind of a neutral thing. But having hazards that suck, that's not acceptable, right? At least when it comes to like balance and stuff like that. Anyways, on to the next. So this is Forge. Now Forge to me is like the second most beautiful map in this game. I know it's a really small one and it doesn't have many things to it, but I love the sound of the hammer hitting the anvil. I love all the different nuances to this map. I love how the fire looks and the lava. Speaking of the lava, I think it's a good hazard. I know it takes up a lot of that zone, but it doesn't feel like it's cumbersome, right? It doesn't feel like you always get ledged there or anything like that, or you're always in the lava or anything like that. It feels like you can have a good fight, and if the person like is really trying to ledge you, sometimes they'll get it, but sometimes they won't. And I think it's because of like the angle that the lava is. It goes in a little bit of a circle, so most characters who like will push you in a straight line more often than not will miss the lava. Maybe that has something to do with it. And then on C, I feel like those hazards are perfect. There's like one or two hazards you can get knocked off of, but you have to really be careless for it to happen or get mixed up, which again, you deserved it. So I would say that this Forge is probably going to be another A tier. The only reason why, again, this is not S tier is because it's a linear one. So the zones are not even. One zone is clearly for one team, the other zone is clearly for the other, and it's kind of a fight for B, right? The only difference with this map is it's a little bit smaller, so a lot of times teams are going to each zone. So that's the only reason why I might put it a little bit higher than like Beachhead. On to the next. And honestly, I don't know if there's going to be any D tier. Like, there might be some C, but I don't know if there's going to be any D tier. We'll see. All right, so now we have the Gauntlet. So now the Gauntlets, it's hard to, I guess, remember like what the Gauntlet is. Obviously, you'll have video on the screen, but when it comes to the picture, it's hard to see like... A lot of these, it's hard to know what they are from the picture, so if you were confused looking at these, do not feel bad. I created these, and I still got confused looking at these, okay? So do not feel bad if you don't know what some of these are. This one right here is the Gauntlet. Now, the Gauntlet is another one that is linear. You'll see with a lot of these earlier maps that that's kind of the case. So when it comes to balance, I feel like that's a notch in the wrong direction. Another thing I don't like about Gauntlet is you have to go through B to get to So if you're, how do I explain this? If I were to say anything like, oh, the covered one or the one that has the pole in the middle, I guess that could work, right? The one that has the poles in the middle, if you spawn on that side, you cannot get to the other side without going through B. Whereas the other team does not have to go through B to get to your side. They have that ladder that kind of goes, or yeah, they have the bridge that goes over B and goes straight. I know they have to take 2 bridges, but it pretty much goes straight to your spawn zone. Whereas you have to go up towards your zone, right? Go back around and then take a different way or go through B. You don't have as many options as them. So I feel like that's a little bit imbalanced because they have just pretty much better navigation. Like, you cannot deny that they have better navigation because they have multiple ways to get to a point that you don't. So it's just, you know, pretty much a little bit less balanced for me for that reason. Another thing that I don't like about the Gauntlet is honestly the bridge mechanic. At first it was cool, like it was a cool novelty that you could do that, and it was fun to kind of like bait people into going on the bridge and then watching them fall, right? But it closes for so long that it makes it impossible again to get to the other zone without going all the way through B or going around somewhere, which makes navigation just terrible, absolutely terrible. And you can keep that bridge lowered. Like, there's no cooldown for when it comes up that it has to stay up for a while. You can just continue to lower the bridge over and over again to where the other team cannot navigate that bridge and they have to go through a different way where you can set up, you know, different things. And it to me makes it to where there's only one true lane. And I think that's just a terrible idea for any Dominion map. Honestly, for me, guys, the Gauntlet is going to be a C tier map. It looks decent. I think it looks like pretty much every other Viking map, but the balance is not as good as it should be. The navigation caused by the bridge makes it just kind of bad. And then the hazards, like the only hazards that there were the 2 in the middle are the bridges. And one of them have been nerfed to where you're not really going to die from it, which is good, but I don't feel like it changes what needed to be changed, which was the fact that it makes the navigation of the map terrible. So yeah, I would put the Gauntlet there. Moving on, we have High Fort. So High Fort's probably going to be a little bit controversial for people. I feel like you either love or hate this map. The only people who love this map are Raider and Warlord mains, and then pretty much everyone else hates this map. If you get like a toxic group of people who just want to pick this map to, you know, pick again Warlord or Raider and try to ledge you the entire time, they will be successful. Because of how many ledges are on this map, it is insane. It's insane at both ends of the spectrum, right? Either whether you're on C or A, there are ledges everywhere. The only place that there aren't ledges is B, and B has fire. So it's like this map is chock full of hazards that will completely destroy you, that benefit only a certain amount of people. You know what I mean? That being said, it does look great. I think this is one of the better looking maps. I love the sky in this map because it doesn't look all dark and dingy like some of the other ones, right? It looks like you're on a beautiful morning. You could have porridge in this setting. That being said, the aesthetic of it doesn't make much sense, right? Like, you can't really tell where this would be in a city. Like, where is this in the city? Where am I attacking at this moment? Is it outside the city? Is it just like a barracks or something of that nature? And if so, like, where's all the equipment? I don't know. For me, the aesthetic doesn't make much sense, but it looks good. So I would say this is going to be our first B tier map. If it weren't for all the hazards that kind of make it a little bit toxic, I would say it'd be a little bit higher. Like, if they took away some of the hazards from, I think it's A, basically the place with the bridge, then it would be a little bit better. Like, just put a gate up on some of the places where you can get ledged, and maybe all around the bridge, and make the bridge thicker, right? And I think it would be a little bit more fun. People can't just wait for you to go on the bridge and ledge you, or, you know, set up traps for you to get snared in and then ledge you. And it's just like, come on, that's not actually playing the game, right? That's not for honor, or at least it shouldn't be. It's not, you're not playing a fighting game at that point. You're just kind of trolling. So moving on, we have Harbor. So Harbor is another one of my favorite maps. I love this map. I love that the points are somehow equidistant, yet it feels like 1 point belongs to one team and 1 point belongs to the other, but it really doesn't. This is another one of the newer maps, so when it comes to navigation on this map, they nailed it. They have different ways for you to get different places. They have quick ways for you to get different places. Yeah, I don't know what they're called. I think they're called like grappling or something like that. I even tried to look it up, so I'm sorry, but basically the things that you slide on to get from place to place, I'll refer to those as the grappling hooks. So sorry, let me know what they're called in the comments below, but I cannot remember. Anyways, when you're the fact that you can slide on those and get to multiple different places from B is amazing. I wish you could get back to B though, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. On top of that, the looks on this map are amazing. The boats look amazing in the background. You can really tell like what's going on when it comes to the aesthetic, right? You're coming in on a boat, you're attacking the land, like everything makes sense in that aspect. And then the hazards, I feel like, are in perfect places. There are a few places where you can drop down if someone's having a fight and if you know the other person's not paying attention, but they're not everywhere to where you just cannot escape them and stuff like that. You know, I think is it A or C, but the zone that has the hazard right in the middle, it's mostly covered, so it's kind of hard to put them through that hazard. But if like they're really not paying attention or they're, you know, kind of bad, you can do it, right? So it doesn't feel like, dang, if I go to that zone, I'm gonna get ledged. Like there's no possible way I won't get ledged, like it's gonna happen. It never feels like that. So yeah, I would say that the hazards on this map are perfectly placed. Maybe one like in B, but honestly I feel like the bridge on B is a hazard in and of itself. People go up there all the time and drop down on you while you're fighting, and it has a pretty good range of the like half of the zone, I would say. So that hazard as well, and it requires like a person to be there. You know, you're not like shooting something at somebody or something like that. Like it requires you to have a little bit of skill, and that's why I like the drop down hazard the best in my opinion, but again, just my opinion. So that being said, we're gonna go ahead and put Harbor at S tier. I think this is gonna be our first S tier map. Again, it has pretty much everything you need. It looks great. It's one of our newer maps, so again, they had all the assets and the experience they needed. It has great balance with the points being kind of equidistant to each other and easy to navigate from one to the other. And I think all of the hazards are in good places. I don't see anything that's really wrong with this map in particular. I always love when I get this map. Moving on, we have Overwatch. Overwatch is another one that I think is gorgeous. The aesthetic, you know what's going on. You're breaking into someone's dominion, hence the name, right? And you're at their gate. It was kind of their, I guess, tease to Siege before Siege came out, because if I'm not mistaken, this map came out right before quote unquote Siege did. So, you know, everyone was like, man, this map would be perfect if we had something that we were actually, you know, doing something like this. It would be really cool if we were actually doing something like this where we were breaking into a gate. And then Siege came out. So this map, I would say, is the tease to Siege, but it has everything you would need in my opinion, right? It has really good looks, good balance with the equidistant zones, and then you can get to each zone relatively easily. There's a bridge on each side that lets you get to the zones. You can get down to B relatively easy from each zone, though I do wish it were a bit easier to get down from the top of the, basically it's the zone on top of the gate that has the covering. That zone, I feel like it's a little bit hard to get to B, whereas with the other zone, it's a lot easier to get to B. You just run down the steps, right, and you're there. Other than that, though, it's relatively balanced. It has really good navigation, in my opinion. There are a lot of different places that you can go. I do wish there was like a ladder up, like when you're going to that zone that has the covering, like I said before, right? I wish there was like some place that you can go that takes you directly there, because it feels like there should be, because there's a place on the opposite end to take you to the other zone directly. Like you go through steps and, you know, go under bridge, or go through like basically a door, you know what I mean, to get to that area. So I would say that that's the only gripe that I have about it. But other than that, the hazards on this map are pretty good. And then I like that. So on this map, it's interesting because I'm gonna call it A, the zone that has the doors or the latches that go down at the end of the match. That's gonna be A. The other one will be C for this video, okay? I'm sorry if it's the opposite, but that's what we're gonna go with. Anyways, so for A, it used to be the case that those latch doors would go down pretty much immediate. I don't quite remember if they were immediate or if it was like a few minutes after the match started, but they were pretty much immediate, right? And then for the rest of the match, they would be down. And this was a problem because that made, again, that entire zone a hazard. This is why they changed it to where the latches only go down near the end of the match. I can't remember the time limit that it is, or if it's after a few people died. I just don't remember what it is. I'm sorry, but it's usually near the end of the match that those latches go down, and then it makes the entire zone a hazard, right? So they didn't do away with it completely, which I like. I like that it kind of changes the dynamic of the map as you play. I wish they would do more of that, but since they made that change, I think that zone is a lot more balanced. B is pretty balanced, and so is C. So I'm going to have to give this one up to the S tier. This will be our second S tier map. Again, it has everything we're looking for, right? It has the good looks, the balance, the navigation, the decent hazards. And as a reminder, we do not take points away for not having hazards. We take points away for having shitty hazards. All right, moving on. River Fort. So River Fort's an interesting map. River Fort is another map that's went through a lot of changes, right? So again, for the purposes of this video, we'll call C the point that got changed, basically the point that has a bottom area, right? And then A will be the other point, and then B is obviously B. So C is the point with the bottom area, and then A is the other point. So C got a big change a while back. As I mentioned before, it used to be to where the entire zone was C. So even if you went under what's considered the zone now, it would have still been that you're sitting in a zone. And I think the reason they changed this was just because people were kind of running around and not really fighting, just kind of being trolls. And like, if you can't catch them, then they can just kind of run around and make sure that the zone is never capped type of thing, as long as they're down there. They also changed one of the hazards and made it to where you will still live if you get ledged on it. The other hazards still have it to where if you get ledged, you will die, but one or two, I think, of the hazards will not kill you. So it made it a little bit more balanced, because I think, again, on this, I don't know why it is for this map. I think it's how it's set up to where each of those hazards are usually right in front of you when you're fighting. So anytime you were fighting like a raider or warlord, they would just guard break you, and if they did, you were pretty much dead. Because again, that hazard was for some reason just always right in front of you. When it comes to looks, the only thing I don't like about this map is it's always dark for some reason. Like, you can't see the sky at all. It's always, even during the day, it feels dark. But other than that, it's beautiful, right? It has some really good architecture. The aesthetic makes sense. Like, what's happening. You know what I mean? Like, people are attacking a fort that's by a river, right? So you can kind of see that they came in on the boats, and then they came up like that area that you come up from when you're attackers, and then when you're defenders, you're like coming out of the castle to like defend, and it just looks cool. So you can tell what the aesthetic is. The rest of the map looks good. It's, for me, one of the best looking raider map. It's one of the best looking Vikings maps that we have, so I don't think we're missing out on anything there. And then when it comes to the navigation, I definitely feel like this is one of the easier to navigate maps. There are multiple ways to get from and to each point, especially when it comes to A. That point has like 4 different ways to get to B. So a lot of good navigation, and it looks really good with the different places that they put the fire and the torches and things like that. I think those things are really well placed, and they give it like good lighting and good aesthetic. So I think when it comes to looks and navigation, balance, and hazards, this place has it all. This is going to be another S tier map in my opinion. Probably more S tier maps than you guys thought, but I think they did a really good job when it comes to like the Dominion maps later on in the seasons. And you'll notice kind of like the more higher tier ones are the later on in the season maps, because they kind of knew what they were doing. All right, moving on. Sanctuary Bridge. So this one I kind of mentioned before, and you guys probably have a good idea of where it's going to go by now, but let's go over it. So again, this is a linear one, right? And then on top of that, I feel like the navigation isn't that good either, right? You have a couple of places on the side that you can go, but for the most part, even when you're fighting in the middle, you can see people running on those sides, so they can't really back cap or sneak past you and do anything. It's more or less a fight for B. And then once you've fought for B, you can decide to go to the opponent's zone, which is usually a mistake because they usually just come back twice as hard and destroy you because it takes too long, in my opinion, to get to the zones in this map, especially B. Like, it takes way too long for both parties to get to B, in my opinion, on this map. So usually what happens is you'll take over, you'll win B, you'll go to their zone, they'll come back twice as fast because if you die, you have to go all the way back to your zone, and if they die, they're like 10 feet away at their zone. So it makes it to where it's damn near impossible to cap that last zone unless you're just absolutely destroying them, right? In which case, like, it doesn't matter what map you're on, you were going to do that regardless, so that doesn't matter. But when it comes to like two really good teams going up against each other, it's just a fight for B. And I don't like that because there's the whole rest of the map that you can deal with. And then at the end, of course, you go to the other person's zone and, then you finally see it. But it's like, I want to see the whole map. I want to be able to navigate through the entire map and do all of those things. And you can't really do that here. That being said, I do think it's pretty balanced in that regard because of the fact that it's a fight for B. You're just going skill against skill, right? There's no like gimmicks or hazards or anything like that come into play. But that's also a detriment because there's no Dominion game knowledge that comes into play either. There's no like backcapping and getting B when you should, or getting certain zones, or stalling at certain zones when you should. There's none of that. It's just a fight at B. So if you like that, cool, but I just think it could be better. So we're going to go ahead and place that at C tier. This is going to be our second C tier zone, or map rather. Next, and we're coming up at the end here, we have Sentinel, or Sentinel, as I like to call it, and I don't know why. This map is absolutely beautiful. This is one of the most gorgeous maps that we've had, or I think have ever had in Dominion, or maybe even most other game modes. The castle in this map is amazing. The assets that they used are amazing. The fact that you can look out over the ocean, I love that. Love everything about it. And then the fact that, so again, for this video, we will call A the castle zone and C the other zone. So the fact that at C, you can pretty much see the entire map is amazing. And the map looks great, right? That being said, I do wish the navigation were a little bit better. I wish you could get from C down to B a little bit easier because it feels like it's really easy to go from A to B, but it's kind of hard to go from C to B. Now you do have the ballistas up there, but they don't take up, or they don't shoot at enough of the minions for you to capture that zone, and they do not warrant you staying up there. So they are not good for that. They are good for disturbing fights and things like that, but we'll get to that in a minute. Other than that though, when it comes to going to each zone from your beginning zones, I think that it's relatively easy for each team to get to each zone. They're equidistant from each team, so you never know like who's going to go where. It doesn't feel like one zone belongs to the other, so it's really balanced in that aspect. The only thing that I think is holding this zone back, or I'm sorry, this map back, is the ballistas. And again, this may be controversial for some of you. Some of you are like, that's the best part of this map. And I completely understand where you're coming from. I felt that way at first too. But they are really toxic, these ballistas. I cannot stress how toxic the ballistas are, especially how much damage they do. It just really sucks, like when you're in the middle of a fight and you're winning that fight, and then all of a sudden you get hit with the ballista because really no reason. Maybe because somebody in that zone lost their fight, or because you can't pay attention to who's on a ballista and fight your fight at the same time. Like, I don't know, it's just a little bit of a feels bad for me, and it feels like there's no skill involved in it. I love expressions of skill and stuff like that, and the ballista just doesn't have that skill expression for me. It's not like there's a delay when shooting it or anything like that. You don't have to like aim without a reticle because there is one, so there's no like real skill expression. It's just kind of aim and shoot, and this is not a first-person shooter. So that's the reason I don't like it. Again, personal preference. You may love it, you may think it's the best part of the map, but for me, that's the only thing that keeps it from being an S tier map, and that's what puts it right here in the A tier. Moving on. So next we have Temple Garden. Now I know I said some maps were beautiful before, but this map right here takes the cake. In my opinion, this is the most gorgeous map in the game, partially because the Chinese aesthetic. Of course, they have some beautiful architecture, and then the Japanese cherry blossoms and stuff like that. I guess I should say Asian aesthetic, not Chinese, but I think it's supposed to be Chinese. Anyways, the architecture is beautiful. The things that you can't even see during the fight, right, are beautiful. Like you'll probably see them in a video that I'm playing, the statues in the background and stuff like that. Like everything about this map is really pretty. Even the picture that I picked for the tier list is pretty. So, you know, that's one thing that I can say that this map has going for it. On top of that, I think the navigation is top tier. All of the zones being equidistant from each other, you never knowing which zone is going to be or going to have somebody in it. And this is or in my opinion, this is the only zone where people actually go to B at the beginning. I don't know why, but like with every other zone in this tier list, nobody goes to B at the beginning, of course, except for Sanctuary Bridge. But even with that map, I feel like a lot of people go straight to their zone and then to B. Most people don't go directly to B like they do in Temple Garden. And I, again, don't know why that is. Maybe it's how the map is designed, because with how the map is designed, it really just looks like you're supposed to go forward, right? It doesn't look like you go off to the left or the right, and then you do, and then you find out, you know, there's a door right there. You can go through here, but it just looks like you have to go forward. And maybe that's why. I don't know, but I love that. I love the map for that reason. I love the navigation of the map. I think the balance is really good. When it comes to the hazards, there aren't many, and I don't think that's a bad thing. This is one of the only maps that doesn't have a lot of hazards. However, the tree, right? Is that what it's called? The large tree or whatever the fuck it is. Basically, the part of the map that has the pond around it, that part is a little bit of a problem. It's the same thing as I've mentioned before when it comes to like Raiders and Warlords. Constantly getting you ledged on that part of the map, it's a bit of a problem. I feel like if they covered the entire very back part of it and just kind of left the side ledges alone, it would be better and it would be a little bit less toxic, right? You wouldn't be able to just straight up ledge people all the time. Because let me tell you, if I'm playing as Raider or Warlord on that map and I'm under that tree, you're getting ledged, buddy. It's happening. Okay, so that right there is the only thing that I would say is keeping this from being S tier. But it's a big thing, right? That's 1/3 of the map basically. Like one whole zone of the map is just terrible. Well, let me not say just terrible. It's bad, right? It could definitely be better. And honestly, for that reason, I'll probably move it even lower, because most of these maps don't have a place where there's like an extreme hazard that makes it feel cumbersome. Again, Forge doesn't feel like, I know that all of inside of the Forge is pretty much a hazard along that strip, but again, it just doesn't feel that way compared to some of these other maps. And this one right here, matter of fact, I'd probably put at the top of B tier, because it reminds me a lot of Skyfort, where one of the zones is not completely unplayable, but it's really bad, right? Those two have kind of the same problem, but I do think that Temple Garden looks a lot better than Skyfort, in my opinion. So maybe bottom of A, top of B tier. Like if you had an argument that, hey, that actually belongs in A, then okay, I can see that. But we'll put it at top of B tier for now. All right, and last but not least, definitely not least, another one of my favorite maps. I probably have 3 or 4 that I love to go to whenever they're available. And this is definitely one of them, the Shard. So the Shard, I can't remember if it's a newer map or not, but it definitely has all of the things that you're looking for when it comes to looks, right? It has the aesthetic of like, you can feel the war going on in the background. It feels like they're coming in from, you know, over the wall. It almost feels like a Lord of the Rings type of thing. Whenever you really stop and look at it, it looks like, you know, the Lord of the Rings when they come up over the wall or whatever, because they have the siege towers right there. But maybe that's just me. I would love to be able to go inside the siege tower and then go below and get to like one of the zones through there. But, you know, it is what it is. That being said, I think the navigation on this map is superb. There are multiple ways to get from B, which I think this map is one of the only maps where B is not the minion map. There may be like one other, but to get to B, from B to A or C, there are multiple ways you can do it. And this map is not just a fight for B. I think because of the layout of the map, it kind of leads you to A, but you can go to B, right? So a lot of people end up going to A, but B is like the main center zone. So it makes it to where everyone kind of goes to a different zone. You never know who's gonna go where. Again, my preference, and to where you can have just multiple fights in different areas. The hazards on this map I think are great. The only one that I think could go is the fire in the middle of B. That could go, right? I don't think anyone really likes that, as long as it's like, maybe if they just put like the crates there with no fire, so you can still get a splash but it wouldn't necessarily catch them on fire, I think would be better. And then leave the marsh area, or I don't know what the fuck it's called, the water area open there, and that'll be just kind of the only real hazard. I don't consider walls hazards. Like, if you get knocked against the wall, it's just part of the game, right? It's like part of the gameplay, and all you're getting is a heavy, and sometimes not even that if they don't follow up correctly. So maybe take that hazard away, make it just a wall, and then leave the hazard on the side. I think the hazard up top of A is good, because it's really small and it has the 2 pillars around it, so you kind of have to intentionally be in that area and intentionally be trying to hit someone with that hazard. But most people know that it's there and they're not stupid, so they're not just going to go, you know, waltzing up to the hazard and get hit by it. I mean, it happens every now and then, but it's not to the point where it feels like it's oppressive and it's the only thing that ever happens on that map. That being said, I think this is going to be our final S tier map. Honestly, I do think the Shard is S tier. It's one, I feel like it's one of the older maps. I cannot remember for sure, but this is another map that just reminds me of old school For Honor, or reminds me of like original For Honor things, and I think they just did a really good job with it aesthetically. I don't know if you guys have noticed that there's a pig on the end screen now, on the windscreen. I don't know if that pig was always there. I feel like it wasn't. Let me know in the comments below if you've noticed it and if it was still there. But that's it, right? That's gonna be our tier list. Again, there's no D tier maps. I don't feel like any of them are really bad. Maybe some of them before their changes were D tier. You could probably argue that the Gauntlet before its changes is D tier, right? Like, if you wanted to put Gauntlet before it had its little bridge change to D tier, I'd completely understand that. You know, and then maybe 1 or 2 of these like upper to a level, but I think this stands pretty good where it's at. Honestly, more S tiers than I even thought there was gonna be. I thought there would maybe be 1 or 2, but I realize now there are a few maps that I just really enjoy and that I think are really good. So, you know, let me know what you all think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I really do enjoy reading your comments and kind of seeing what you all have to say. Of course, this video is not scripted. I do want this to feel natural for you all. I don't script my videos on purpose because I don't want to sit here and sound like this and be like, hey, do you guys really like this game? That's just not me. So that'll never be like what you get from me. You always get Dante, and I hope you appreciate that. If you do, leave a like, subscribe, do all the things. This has been Yahte Gaming. We will see you in the next one. Other than that, stay safe, be blessed, and I'm out.